So welcome everyone. We're here today to talk about Concord's AI Copilot for procurement teams. So procurement, basically, you have to be very precise. You're looking at, things like vendor contracts, deadlines, spend. You need to be precise with all of that, but you also need to operate at scale, right? So we're going to talk about how AI Copilot can help you manage all of those concerns um, with the speed of AI, but the precision that you're used to. So a little bit of today's agenda. I'll set the stage a bit, just kind of go through what are the kinds of challenges you're facing if you're running procurement in 2025. What is Copilot and how does it help? Quincy here is on our sales team. He's an expert with all things Concord, so he's going to take us through a live demo right here. He'll walk you through some use cases on vendor contract management and how you can use Copilot to streamline those processes. We'll take your questions live. We will, like I said, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat at any point during the presentation while I'm talking or while Quincy is demoing. And we'll hold the questions until once Quincy is done with the demo portion. But yeah, Blake is also here to facilitate those. So drop a question in the chat, drop a question in the Q&A, and we promise we will get to all of them. Then we'll give you a little sneak peek of what's next after that. So with that said, I'll go ahead and jump into what is going on with procurement and what is Copilot. So procurement, like I said, you're on the hook for managing spend, managing vendor risk. It's up to you to make sure you're managing all these deadlines. You're staying on top of renewal deadlines. You don't want to be stuck with vendors you meant to cancel and you didn't have time because you didn't realize the deadline was coming up, right? When you do want to renew with a vendor, you want to make sure you're getting the best terms. Is the vendor performing? Are they doing everything they're supposed to be doing? But you need answers about what's in your contracts in order to do that. You need to know what did the vendor promise they were going to do in the first place, and in order to hold the vendor to their promises. Like I said, you miss opportunities to renegotiate if you don't have time because you got blindsided by a deadline that came up because it wasn't on your radar. You're stuck managing things in spreadsheets, going back and forth via email. So how do you fix that? How do you handle that? You need a way to scale up those operations. You need to combine all that intelligence you need and those rigid compliance requirements with the speed of operating in 2025. And that is why we built AI Copilot. So what is AI Copilot? It's right there within Concord for everybody who's on an AI plan. And basically, it's pretty simple. If you can use ChatGPT, if you can ping a coworker on Slack, you can use Copilot. It's really as simple as just typing in a question, typing in a comment, saying, "I need to know about this. I need to get this done," and it gives you quick, plain language answers about what's going on with your contracts. What are the terms? What are the payment terms? Um, what are some of the risks that you're looking at in the contract? What are the deadlines? How long do you have to pay your invoices? That sort of thing. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Quincy, and he will take us through a live demo of what are some of the things we can actually do with AI Copilot when we're managing vendor contracts.
Thanks, Cheskino. And just to give everyone the background, like Cheskino mentioned, I'm an account executive here with Concord. I've been selling contract management systems for about 8 years now. And what I'm finding with the procurement teams I'm working with, even more so nowadays, procurement is handling sort of the front line initial review of contracts before they pass it to like general counsel, for example. So within the Concord system, we're looking at, just a basic procurement contract here. Um, Inside of the system, just for context, we have some attendees here. They're already customers of ours. Some are just, maybe checking out Concord. If you're on one of our current subscriptions, what we call our AI plans, you'll have access to a couple other details relevant for, how procurement uses Concord. There is already AI here that it is extracting information out of contracts that you put into Concord. So your basic details like party names, descriptions of what's in this contract, the life cycle details, as well as any sort of notice of termination or notice of non-renewal language gets extracted, and then more information about the payment terms and the total agreement value. So if you don't have this capability yet and you want to check it out further, just let me or Blake know. You'll have our contact information after the webinar. But back to the Copilot here. So we open up our Copilot section on the right, and As far as how I like to use Concord, there's a couple standard prompts that I like to run contracts through, just to get a grip of some of the key clauses in the contract. And so a little long here, but I'm looking for, okay, what is the payment amount, payment terms, and term length, just to verify that that information is correct from the data extraction. The renewal terms, also limitation of liability and jurisdiction. So I just feed this question in, and then the AI will provide me responses. And so I have my basic details here. Now I can load this information in as a field into the Concord system if I want to be able to track it, run reports on some of this information in the future. Another sort of frontline prompt that I like to use when I first start looking at a contract is this one here. What terms are unclear, and show me where these terms are located in the contract. What you'll learn is as you start using these AI search capabilities more and more, not just in Concord, but in other systems, is the quality of the prompt leads to the quality of the response. So you'll see me do things like show me where these terms are located. It's great to know which terms are unclear, but I want to see where they're at in the contract quickly. So you kind of, play around with your prompt a little bit to get a better, cleaner response.
Which I think is a good point and something that we can also help with as you guys utilize this. If you're needing help with your prompts or things, that's absolutely something that Quincy or I or your other CSM can absolutely help with too. So as you're playing around with it, don't hesitate to reach out if you need assistance there.
Yeah, great call. And like you'll see with this example, whoever sent me this contract just didn't even fill in what the arbitration location is. So as opposed to me, sending this over to legal counsel, I'm able to just get a grip on, okay, is anything unclear? Is there any ambiguity in the contract? Give me a summary of the key points, the key clauses that I'm looking for. And with the attendees mix that we have on the call as well, there's some, depending on if you're working with a governmental organization, there's going to be some key terms, key language that you must have in any contracts with vendors. Think about like a non-appropriations clause if you're a school district or, a governmental agency. And so you can use the AI here to search through the payment terms, and then you could even have it suggest alternative language to specific clauses in the contract just by prompting it. And then another one, Cheskino, that you had mentioned earlier this week is also getting on top of data protection. Whether you're a school district or whether you're someone that's working with a multinational organization, you might want to run a prompt that says, "Is data protection mentioned in the agreement? If so, where is it located?" So once again, just getting on top of the standard clauses and the standard language that matters for whatever business you work in. Just blank. Any other examples that you might want me to run the attendees through here?
Yeah, I mean, these are great examples. Data privacy, as you mentioned, is always top of mind these days. One thing, just really simply, what if a person wants to know, they're looking at a contract with some payment terms, they need to know how long do I have to pay my invoices on this contract?
Right. Do I have to pay my invoice? If I can spell, there we go.
Very nice.
Perfect. And it even referenced the section there, which is nice to see.
Yeah, and then I think what I like too that you kind of briefly mentioned as well is that all of this information, like as he's showing there, you can copy, right? You can take this information, you can also apply it into that summary panel as well. So if you have something like an invoice, a date that you have to pay your invoice, you can add that to your key terms section so that you can receive reminders and things like it as well. Like it lives here in this Copilot section of your document view, but there's when merged with the other tools, it really becomes something that can be pretty useful.
I do.
Looks like we have a question in the chat from Jason, comparing, can I compare multiple contracts at once? I'm not currently in this, kind of first iteration of this Copilot functionality, Jason, but that is something that we are working towards building into the Concord system. Right now, you can compare different versions of contracts, but comparing, two separate contracts, just not available yet.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because one thing we've looked at is how you can repurpose clauses within a new contract. What if we, and I don't know if you have another one open, so I know this is kind of a pop quiz, but what if we were to take one of these data privacy clauses, just paste it into another one, ask how it compares? Could we do that? Have we tried that? I know that's a little impromptu.
We can definitely do it. So confidentiality and data security. So that's section 7 here. The way this document is set up is it's stagnant inside of the system. So might just have to pull up another document to do that. While I'm pulling up other documents, I'd love to hear from the attendees in the chat. What sort of language, like critical terms are you looking through contracts to spot and evaluate?
Yeah, and while people are coming up with some of those examples, I know another one I've seen is people want to look at things like liability limitations, indemnification, because especially with some of the disruptions you see to supply chains these days, whether it's tariffs or acts of war, right? People want to know how is that impacting me. So yeah, and I see we already pulled that up actually in the risk assessment.
Right, in this one, this is a $280,000 or something contract. So, a 12-month cap. A cap that's based upon the value of the contract might be okay, but we might want to suggest, depending on contract value, I don't know, 5, 6x cap. So, good call out. And then Dana mentioned we're looking for arbitration clauses, legal venue. So yeah, jurisdiction, venue, what are the arbitration? And Dana, like I touched on earlier, that's something that we could work on together. If you just want to come up with a couple standard prompts that you run all the contracts through, it's pretty easy. Like you saw me do at the start of the meeting, I just copied and pasted my prompt in, and I, found all the specific details that I'm looking to see in every contract.
All right,
All right, we have another question then. Does this allow for searching the agreement as well? Or sorry, does this allow for searching the agreement, or can you mark up as well?
You can mark up as well in the system, Rodney. There's in-app sort of contract, suggest that it's functionality here, and I can pull that up and show it briefly. Basically, Rodney, it functions like Google Doc. And so, as you send documents back and forth between parties, or if you received a marked up version of an agreement, let's say in Word from a vendor, you'd be able to bring in that Word document into the system and then suggest edits directly to it inside of Concord. And then the system will handle the versioning. It'll keep a running trail of all the suggested edits, as well as if they were accepted or rejected.
Yep. And the Copilot is a great tool for negotiating your contracts and editing there so that you can before it's fully signed and before it's fully locked up, say, ask it questions about, hey, how would you revise this? Or can you translate this? Even we've seen some people do. So yeah, so allow it to be a tool for you as you're, generating your contracts and things like that. Here's a good question for you, Quincy. Is the information I use with AI shared with others or used for learning?
It is not. So we've signed what's called zero data retention policies with our AI providers. We use both OpenAI and a Google Gemini that's been trained specifically on a population of about 100,000 contracts that Concord owns. But in short, none of your data leaves your Concord account to train external AI models.
Very nice. And one thing I wanted to mention, like Quincy, you touched on compliance, how certainly in certain industries and like government especially, a lot of people will need to see that their vendors are meeting stricter requirements. I don't know if this particular contract will have that, but do we have, what about like looking for a mention of insurance or like some sort of certification? Is there,
Yeah, and once again, we can add that into sort of a standard prompt or a couple standard prompts, is certificate of insurance mentioned. So we can run it through here to look for specific, compliances, specific, documentation that we might need, from this vendor. And then if we can find that information, then certainly, capture it in the field, so it lives on the document itself. And so here, Cheskina, back to your example, it's going to be tough to show here, comparing two different agreements.
yeah.
This data protection of this, master services agreement is listed in many different areas here. So to do a direct like document to document compare, I would wait till the next iteration of this Copilot functionality, Jason, to be able to do a true compare document to document.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One of the things I like about Copilot is that it's very good at when you see like these concerns are split between different clauses, as they so often are. Section 9, 9.2, 9.4, 9.6. It does a good job. It's not limited to just finding one clause, retrieving that one thing. It'll tell you all the different places in the contract you need to be looking. Yeah, but yeah, to your point, Quincy, that does make that can make document to document comparison different, just because they're almost always formatted so differently between
Yeah,
different companies' templates or different parties' templates.
absolutely. Well, perfect. Yeah, unless there's any other specific questions in the chat or questions from you both, Blake and Chesky, I'll kind of wrap up the demonstration.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
nothing,
think this is
nothing here in the chat. Yeah.
yeah, I think this was great. So I will go ahead and share my slides again, give people a little more information about where and how to follow up. One moment, I have a lot of open windows. All right, there we go. Can you see my slides?
Loading.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so thank you, Quincy, again. That was a great demo. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. It's always nice to see the engagement, see how curious people are about what they can do with this, and the excitement for what can be done. I like to say it still has that new car smell, but we're already seeing a lot of creative and fairly industrious use cases. So if you would like to learn more about how you can get started, if you are already an existing customer, if you're on an AI plan, as we mentioned, Copilot is available for everybody who's on an AI plan. So you can just open up any document in Concord and get started. If you're a customer and you are not on an AI plan, please go ahead, reach out. Quincy and Blake are right here, very ready to talk to you and get you set up. Now, if you're with us and you're not a customer yet, welcome. We're very glad to have you. I have included this QR code right here on the slide. You can just take a moment to scan it with your phone. Um, yeah, you can go ahead and book a demo, or you can reach out directly to Quincy and just have a conversation to see what you can do with Copilot. As Quincy mentioned, he's talking to a lot of people about their specific use cases, their specific organizational needs. Because the nice thing about the versatility of Copilot is that you can do whatever you're thinking of doing with it. There's a way you can use it for that purpose, right? So yeah, I'm going to leave this up for just a little longer, give you a chance to scan it if you need to. And like I mentioned, we touched on this a little bit, talking about what's up next. But now let's go ahead and take a look. Quincy, could you tell us a little bit about what's coming up with Copilot?
Sure. So what I had demonstrated today was that Copilot on an individual document itself, as a part of the next iteration, we're going to be bringing that Copilot to the system level. So if you picture about having a database of contracts in a Concord account, you'll have a Copilot that you can query against your entire database. Things like show me every single contract over $100,000, or show me every single contract that contains a non-appropriation clause. Whatever you want to write in natural language, you'll be able to ask questions about your entire database of contracts, and then Concord will do things like build reports for you, certainly surface the key contracts, that match the search query. So we're very excited about that one. It's going to be able to just have an entire database of contracts at your fingertips to pull information, just by a simple search.
Yeah, very cool. I've been excited looking at just seeing what's in development, and I'm itching to get my hands on it. So very happy to, or very looking forward to sharing with everybody once we have more of that to share with you directly. All right, and with that said, I think we can go ahead and wrap up unless I can't see the chat right now. So if we don't have
Nothing.
any more questions, I think we can go ahead and thank you again, everyone, for your time, for joining us today. Thank you, Quincy, for a great demo. Thank you, Blake, for handling the questions. And yeah, everyone, don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out to Quincy, like we said, or if you're already a customer, reach out to Quincy or Blake, and we'll be happy to get you set up. So thank you for joining us and take care.